It's the greatest mystery in literary history. A divisive question with highly contested answers. Who was the writer behind the pen name William Shakespeare? Welcome to Don't Quill the Messenger. Here's your host, Stephen Sable.
Welcome back, Quiller Nation. We're so happy you can be here, and thank you for choosing us as one of your sources of edutainment. I hope you enjoyed the last episode where we introduced and spoke with Dr. Erminia Passannanti all the way from Salerno, Italy, where she lives part of the year, spending the other part of her year teaching and living in Oxford, England. As I mentioned before, I always find my foreign guests particularly intriguing. And as sometimes is wont to happen, the conversations can run away from the clock. Thankfully, we don't have commercial breaks or time constraints of any kind here, so we can always just let the conversations flow. That said, welcome back to part 2 of the Italian Matrix, where we pick up the conversation with Machiavelli and move into other clues that our author knew and absorbed Machiavelli's criticism of the halls of power.
Which woman could exercise such a power on him, which is almost sadistical, on a man like him, if not a queen or someone of that kind of level, no?
And he rails against her repeatedly in many of the works, as you point out in your writing. And two particular works, Measure for Measure is one particular one where I think he is just pounding on the hypocrisy of power and how laws are made only for those who don't have the power to break them and get away with it, right? Like that's a theme for him that occurs again and again. It occurs in, as you point out as well, in King Lear. It's a very purposeful theme, of course, and it's always usually the wicked people who, of course, are the laws don't apply to me; they apply to everyone but me. And we see that over and over again in many of his characters. And as you point out, which is the first time that I've seen mentioned, that this is probably connected to the writings of Machiavelli, another Italian source. And a lot of people don't know. Everybody knows Machiavelli wrote The Prince, right? But a lot of people don't know that Machiavelli also wrote plays.
Comedy, yes.
Yes,
comedy.
And his most famous is, The Mandrake, which is also a play that I have produced and directed. Which is very rare for anybody, but it's a very funny play. It's very satirical, and it's very much the great grandparent of Measure for Measure, because it's basically, as Machiavelli wrote, laws are made and broken according to the convenience of those who command. And
absolutely,
I think he points this out not only through the plays, but as clearly as he can in the sonnets as well. And thus the whole idea of this dark lady who is this supreme power and has the control of everything, including his heart, his life, his mind, his very soul to some degree. But yet he both loves and hates her at the same time for this control that she has over him and her ability to wield it at her own whim without regard for any consistency whatsoever.
No, exactly. I mean, no woman, we are women, we know that you may have that power for a very short period of time, very, very feeble kind of power. But if it is perceived like that by the man in a relationship, but that power that is exercised on the mind of this poet who is writing is a supreme form of power. It's a supreme form of power, to the point that he accepts to have a rival stealing the woman he loves from him. And it's so, subjected to her, that he says, oh, it's all right, the sweet thief, have her, you have her, she has you, and I am like in between. But no, in real life, this doesn't happen. In real life, it doesn't happen. It happens only when the woman in question has a supreme power on you and can decide on your life and on your death, as Elizabeth did. But as when you said about, you are talking about Machiavelli, no, Machiavelli, La Mandragora. La Mandragora, why did he write La Mandragora? Because Machiavelli was aware, like Dante, like all the Italians intellectuals, that in order to pass knowledge to the folk people, in order to have a good society, in order to have a good nation, you don't have to have only the prince and this entourage becoming cultured. You have to instruct also the folk people, because intelligence is distributed equally in the human brain. It's just the opportunity that you give them to learn that makes the difference. So in the Mandragora, basically, there are exactly the same things that are written in the Prince, but presented in a way so that the folk people could understand. And what is this? This is exactly what Shakespeare, the Vere, did with the Globe. Did exactly the same. We have to find a way so that the English people in London, our contemporaries, are exposed to knowledge, to the histories, to the intrigues, to all that, the plots, everything that happens has to be, like in the Mandragora, not only passed between a nobleman to another nobleman and to the aristocracy, but also the people must learn about it. Otherwise, society does not develop further, remains divided. So the Globe was a big educational enterprise. Was a big educational enterprise that was supported, of course, was supported by the monarchy, because if Elizabeth did not give permission, nothing could happen. The thing is that he could not sign with his real names plays that were critical of the very nature of monarchy, the failures, all the kings that he represented in their failures, in their inabilities to govern. I mean, he had to be in disguise, not only to save his head, not to have the head, but also the head of his acquaintances. For instance, let's talk about again the tragic plot, the Essex revolt, the revolt. I mean, we can't forget that the Earl that had the head in the basket for the Essex revolt was a close friend of Southampton, of Rosalie. And Rosalie was magically saved. Who saved? Who saved this guy? Who was the person who dedicated to him, 100 and how many sonnets
54.
were? 126.
154.
Huh? No, I mean the ones to the...
there are a total of 154 sonnets.
No, I'm talking about the ones dedicated to him, 126, to the fair youth sonnets, no?
Yep.
They were dedicated to this beautiful, amazing, spoiled Earl. But he was so intimate with this Earl that he saved his life, because Edward de Vere was in the trial as a judge to decide for the high treason against Elizabeth. And when the Earl of Essex was condemned to death and decapitated, he had his head in the basket, was life sentence, and was killed, like was killed so many other people, and also before him so many other people, also the cousin of Elizabeth. So she was a terrible queen. But he managed, the Vere, to intervene, to have his close friend, his younger friend, called the Earl of Southampton, Henry Rosalie, saved from the execution and released after 2 years of imprisonment after Queen Elizabeth died. So he had an enormous power, and he managed to remain, in power, ambiguous, not to be spotted like being against Elizabeth in a way.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's the story of an internal civil war, and the losers lose bad. And you're right, and I think that there are many of us who believe that the sonnets tell that story. And you call the sonnets the most existential poetry on the planet, and suggest that they should be studied as sort of a modern gospel of the human condition. I think that's a wonderful quote. And the voice, and I would add to that, it's the voice of the melancholic poet. And it's probably the most melancholy we find him, setting aside maybe Jaques and As You Like It, who I think is a personality of the writer, obviously, right? And De Vere is sort of the Jaques of the English court. And I believe that, in 1604, when he suddenly disappears, he pulls a Jaques. He goes off and becomes a hermit. Just like Jaques says, I'm going to go.
Or maybe went to Italy.
I'm going to go follow a religious man and see what that's all about now for the rest of my life.
Oh no, I mean maybe he managed to go back to his house in Venice, because we know from the records, from a document that was a report, that he rejected to be host of the court. He rejected to be hosted in one of the apartments.
I can't imagine that he wouldn't want to spend out the rest of his days there after spending the time that he spent there, the influence it obviously had on his life and on his writings. And then later in life, I can't imagine that you wouldn't. I mean, that's my goal. My goal is to spend the end of my days in Italy. I want to retire somewhere in Tuscany.
Here.
I have most of my family is from Naples area. There's a little town just outside of Naples. Why is the name escaping me? Is it Severino? San Severino?
San Severino.
Do you know where that is? That's
San Severino.
Yeah, my great grandparents are from there.
Ah, fantastic. It's very close. I mean, the area is very close from the place where the Giordano Bruno, the monk that was in London when De Vere was also there, Nola. So it's very close to that area, where one of the biggest philosophers of the Italian Renaissance, that was burned at stake. His tongue was cut and he was burned at stake by the Inquisition, because he was telling not what they wanted to listen to. But I wanted to say, why do I say that he should be read as a gospel, an existential gospel? First of all, of course, he replicated the Petrarchian sonnet, right? And Petrarch replicated Dante's sonnets. And Dante wrote his sonnets along with another guy, which is, to me, is the best sonneteer ever, which is Guido Cavalcanti. So all these people adopted this form that came from Sicily, actually. The inventors are Sicilians. So it was from Sicily that the form of the sonnet come from. But why? Because it's such a challenge for a mind to write a poem and to insert the content of that poem within the cage that is the sonnet. The sonnet is a metrical cage that is almost impossible. So wait a second, whoever wrote the sonnets in English was a genius, because he went beyond the Italian tradition of the amor cortese. Oh, I am a poet because I am a superior guy, because I am able to prize the qualities of this dama, of this dame who is beyond belief beautiful and pure and unreachable. And no, I mean, they were inventing characters. Dante was inventing the character of Beatrice, and then Petrarca was inventing the character of Laura. They had to put together characteristics of the women of their periods that are like angels, that do not walk on the ground, they float. They do not speak a real language. When they open their mouths, they emanate flowers and smell like flowers. They are like angels. And the poetics was that if I am able to speak about such a noble subject, that is the amor cortese, then this subject, to speak about women of such elevation, of such virtues, elevates me as well. So the sonnet form was instrumental for the poets to establish themselves as superior beings compared to, you know, to the normal men that were warriors or politicians or, you know, just, you know, traders. They, poets, were superiors because they were able to speak about these entities that were supernatural beings, that were the women. In fact, Beatrice was a real woman who was married to another man. And when she saw Dante passing by on the bridge in Florence, she would change direction because she was embarrassed. She thought, this is a weirdo. Why are you? Yeah.
Well, a lot of poets and artists have been called weirdos and considered to be weird and strange and aberrant in their behaviors, of course.
Yes. Imagine this poor woman at the age of 14, already married to a man in town, and being actually the chronicle says that she was exceptionally beautiful. Okay, so it's not only Dante, there were all the men in the city after her, you know, standing there waiting for her to pass by. And Dante thought, maybe if I write poems and I send these poems to her and I tell her friends that I've written these poems, maybe she will give me a special attention. But no, in fact, she reacted, and it is said in the poems, in the sonnet, that she reacted as being scared of him. What does he want from me with these sonnets dedicated to me? No, and he would go home and cry and write commentaries to his own sonnet, saying how devastated I am that she's not appreciating my sonnet as you would expect. No, I mean, you're embarrassing me in the city of Florence. I am, you know, a lady here. The same for Petrarca. Petrarca got obsessed with this woman, even when she was dead. She died very early, like all women would die. By the age of 30, they were all, you know, cadavers in the tomb. But they would keep on writing about them. I mean, Dante invented the figure of Beatrice in the Paradise. Beatrice accompanies Dante through the Paradise, and she's the leader, the guiding entity towards the seat of God. And as for Petrarca, he keeps on writing 300 and plus sonnets after she died, like inventing. Well, what does Shakespeare does in his sonnet? He says, look, this is all rubbish. I'm not talking about this kind of woman. I'm talking about a real woman who is sun-tanned, who doesn't care about appearing pale, blue-eyed, blonde, but she probably walks like a boy, treads on the ground. She eats garlic and her breath smells. That was a revolution, a stylistic revolution. And therefore, he added the reality to this amor cortese kind of tradition. He renewed it, made it real, added what is called, you know, mimesis, taking from real life what is there, what passes on emotion. because Dante and Cavalcanti, they were inventing their emotion. Of course, their invented emotion was presented in the highest literary form possible, because it is the quality, I mean, just to be clear, the language that Dante and Petrarca spoke is exactly the same identical language that we speak Italian today.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the same identical language. It means that if I open the Divine Comedy or Petrarca's sonnets, I, as old Italians, in fact, they are works in the Italian syllabus. They always have been, because they speak the same identical Italian language. Why? Because they standardized with their works the Italian, like being that kind of Italian, you know. In Florence there was one, and in Tuscany there was an academia of language called l'Accademia della Crusca. They took particular examples of literary works to standardize the grammar, the syntax, the lexicon. You know, they said that these are the works that make the perfect Italian language. And therefore, all the other writers would write in the same identical style, which is not the vernacular, it is Italian.
Well, and I don't think a lot of people understand or appreciate why and how Italy becomes such a bastion of inspiration and source material for so many other writers in so many other countries. I mean, from as early as the 13th century and continuing throughout the 17th century, it's the center of literary works. And part of that, I think, is because it's the home of Latin. And so that certainly helped a lot. A big part of that is it was home to the church prior to Martin Luther and King Henry VIII, Calvin, yes. Right? It was the seat of some of the most important printed works in history, from Boccaccio to Bandello to Machiavelli to Castiglione to Dante. But also, I think people fail to recognize the importance of the city-state structure that was happening.
States,
and including, and most important, the metropolitan and cosmopolitan nature of Venice. And I don't think a lot of people know that, you know, we all know about Gutenberg's printing press, but I don't think people realize that Venice became sort of like the publishing house of the world as early as 1460 with the Aldine press, right? Aldine. And that changes everything. And it's not just an influence on Edward de Vere. It's an influence on Spanish writers. It's an influence on French writers. I mean, you have Montaigne, Valois, Vega, Cervantes, even, I would posit, Nostradamus, who is technically a poet who wrote in verse. Right? These are all famous writers who owe a lot of their inspiration and what they end up rewriting, as you point out in your essay, are these Italian works that first came to them either in Italian or, in some cases, the more classical works in Latin first, right?
Well, much is to do with the Italian mentality, with Italian way of life, the Italian way of perceiving. Italy is a bit of an outrageous country. Things are always extreme here. It is, I mean, that's why we had the fascism. That's why we had the Roman Empire, because it's in the mentality. I don't, as I said at the beginning, I don't think that time counts much when it comes to certain populations, certain languages, attitudes in their social interactions. I would say everything is extreme in Italy. So passion, extreme passion, war, ideology, everything is felt. And I mean, you have been in Italy, so you know how it is.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it there.
It's a bit, you are not prevented from going in the street and making friends within a few seconds with people talking, because people love talking to each other. That was the case 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 400 years ago. That is kind of the folk attitude, you know.
Well, and
It's probably the weather.
I just traveled from town to town, from Barcelona all the way through the French Riviera, Monte Carlo, and then into Italy, through Savona, Genova, and then up to Milan. And I can tell you, Italian people are friendlier, they're more helpful, they are more engaging, they're more personable than anybody else in any of those other two countries that we came across or met or dealt with regularly.
Yeah, of course, this has got the pros and the cons, because you come in Italy, and if you wear socks while wearing your sandals, then you will have all the people looking at you. You know, oh my God, what is it? Socks with sandals.
What is that?
Sandals, with sandals, you have to have bare feet.
Yes.
So, and the people here, when you pass by, they look at you. It's true that they talk to you, but they would pass comments. They would even touch you. You know, they would touch you when you talk. You may have attitudes of confidentiality earlier than you would expect. Let's say, in Italy, it's like that. You do not bother if another human being touches you. No. Or talks to you while you are in a queue. You just stand and talk.
Well, growing up in an Italian family, I mean, you know, we hug each other, we kiss each other. We're very tactile people. We're constantly touching each other. It's just part of our DNA. And then you enter into an environment where it's more austere or stoic, and you stand out like a sore thumb. And you know, it's one of the reasons why I think, you know, the stereotype of Italians flailing their arms all over the place when we talk, right? And they say, well, what's the best way to silence an Italian is tie their hands behind their back, and they can no longer speak, right?
No, this is it. I mean, this is it. So for me, I live a life between two countries. I am partly here in Italy, and when I am here, it may become too much, and then I want to go back to Oxford. And when I go to Oxford, I have my closest friends who I have known for 25 years, 30 years, that if I, touch their necklace and to put, the hanging thing in order on their cleavage and say, let me put this in order for you. I mean, it's a bit, they would say, I have my, don't touch me. I have my private space. I don't like to be touched. No, people that you have known for 30 years. Then if you put inadvertently or intentionally your hands on them, they say, oh, please don't. I'm British. I don't like it.
I'm British.
We don't
smile. We don't laugh. We don't hug. We don't kiss. We don't.
But these are the same people, because I have my English friends coming as guests to my Italian apartment. They come for guests. They can stay as long as they want. These are the same identical people that as soon as they land on the Salerno and Amalfi coast airport, as soon as they land, they change completely. And for the entire length of their staying here, they become different. So I think it's not a question of the individual, it's the environment.
Well, and all the more reason why it makes sense that, when you have somebody who was and it's on record that he was as presentational and theatrical and flamboyant as he was, the Italianate Earl, they called him. It's no wonder that when he finds himself in Italy, he finds a home. He finds a place where he feels like he belongs. Yeah. And from what I can tell, his letters back home, I don't think he ever wanted to leave. I think he would have stayed in Italy for the rest of his life. I don't think he really wanted to come home. Oh, I've got a cough. I don't think I can travel. It's not until the Queen finally says, "Get your ass back here right now," that he finally goes, "Okay, if I don't, Walsingham will send assassins and I'll be dead within a month."
He brought a lot of books with him for certain. he brought a lot of books because they were sold in Venice, printed. There were bookshops everywhere. For certain, he first of all did not travel on his own. He was accompanied. So imagine the Vere arriving in Mantova, Padova, Firenze, Venezia, Ferrara, accompanied by a secretary. And then a
the entire entourage. I'm certain he had to have at least five or six people. And then
a servant, of course, an interpreter, and all the crew that he had to have to travel that would carry his many luggages and boxes. And then did he want to come back? And a report says that when he went to Venice, he did not, as I was saying, accept to be hosted at an apartment. He wanted to put on a house. The expression is mettere su casa. So we know that the Vere in Venezia rented. I mean, probably he just paid and bought a house, because imagine a rundown house in Venice would have costed him like we pay for the peanuts and the beer. Yes, of course, he went there and he kept on asking money from the queens. Oh, sell this land, I don't need the land. Or sell this other land, I don't need it. Send the money here. And so when he went there, I think that this is my fantasy. That is not realistic. But I think he invented that he died because he was only 54. And I mean, a very sporty guy. But he went back to the house in Venezia. This is my dream. I hope for him that he did that. Bought a lot of beautiful furniture, paintings, and lived the rest of his life in good weather in Venice.
I did a 2-part bonus feature episode on this topic, and I agree. I don't think he died in 1604 either. I think it was a faked death, and I think that there's evidence to prove that. I don't know that there's any evidence that he ends up back in Italy, but he definitely went into seclusion. And I believe during that time he was working on his manuscripts and getting them ready for publication and preparing what we know now as the first folio. I believe that that's what was happening. And then there are others who believe he may have been working on the King James Bible, and thus the king allowed him to go live in oblivion and seclusion and didn't bother him and provided him the lands and the funds that he needed and took care of things because he was working on this wonderful literary project, which is also a great possibility, I think. And that, again, that would be more of, as you point out in your work, the sort of the rewriting, the reimagining, and you refer to the work of a professor, Christian Moraru, and you sort of apply his theories to the Shakespeare canon. And I think it's a wonderful overlay because you point out that even if we're not looking at the authorship mystery, if we're just looking at the works, what we see here is obvious concealment. There's a lot of themes of concealment and characters assuming fake identities or wearing disguises, but also the number of characters who sort of become the multiple identities and voices of the author, whoever the author is. I think that the content, the characters, there are more than 230 speaking characters, like real characters, beyond like servants and soldier number 2 and that kind of a thing. But you're talking about a giant universe of people that he has created through his sources and the rewriting of sources and reimagining and creating certain characters and sub-stories onto already stories that existed. And there are so many similar identities that are almost the same, but not quite the same, that it seems to me that the entire canon is sort of a strategy of camouflage, of hiding behind the works, which lends itself to the idea that the name William Shakespeare is indeed a pseudonym. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. How do you recognize who is the author? In any plays, in any novels, in any group of poems, canzoniere, whatever, let the text speak. Follow our semiotician Umberto Eco's advice. Let the text speak to you. The author can be dead. The author can be camouflaged. The author can wear, a mask of a different gender or different social class. The author, the real author, the poor creature on planet Earth that wants to write may have thousands of reasons why he does not want to appear as he is, but let the text speak. And in that text, you will find that there is not one singular person, but all the people and all the texts and all the works of art and all the social and historical events that have affected that brain. It's a computer speaking, it's a multiple rewriting of whatever we learn since we are alive. In order to explain this better, the rewriting is not only when you write a new piece of art or do a new painting. The rewriting is a continual process of elaboration of what you learn. So even when you speak and you tell somebody what you have just learned and you change the version, that is already a rewriting. This is a human faculty to reinvent on the existing. So this is what writers do. But you may say, oh, but after all, we write always about the same things. For instance, in Shakespeare, one of the topics that makes him super sexy and super erotic is his jealousy. No?
Yeah, he does. He does have an obsession with jealousy.
An obsession.
No doubt about
what it. What he makes the sonnets and also all the plays where this theme is treated. Othello is the most evident one, but is that jealousy makes him super sexual, because a man that does not engage into passion does not feel jealousy.
That's also a very Italian trait.
No, but in a way, I mean, jealousy is when you are obsessed. And if you are obsessed, means that you focus on that particular person, sometimes brutally so, unfortunately, man or woman that you are. But this is a theme that recurs in his writing, is this obsession with jealousy, intrigues at his back. It's a constant source of rewriting of the ancient theme of the man suspecting that the woman is betraying him, that the children are not his own children, and is a never-ending retelling the story. You may imagine, if you go to Boccaccio, also in Boccaccio's novelle, betrayal, suspicious, jealousy, and all these kind of ancient stories that are told in different, forms. But
well, and if we look at the classics, I mean, look how many stories, especially the Greek classics, when we're talking about the pantheon of gods, the Olympians are some of the most jealous and spiteful and vengeful characters in all of literature, right? I mean, I think Hera must be like the epitome of jealousy in classical literature. And so we see this sort of, again, it's a rewriting of a rewriting of a rewriting. And as you pointed out so astutely earlier in the episode, every artist is a child of what has come before and the heir of all the art that has come before. And I love that in your work, and I want to encourage the listeners, go find it. If it's not hard to find, but you can find Erminia's work, Rewriting Concealment and the Italian Matrix, Edward de Vere and the Shakespearean Canon. And as I mentioned, she uses the theory of Professor Christian Moraru as sort of an overlay here. But then also in the work, and I want you to go find it for this reason, folks, is she does her own rewriting of a Shakespearean sonnet to sort of illustrate her point. And the one she chooses is Sonnet 66, which is often known to many of us as the suicide sonnet, because it's obvious that he is saying, I want to die. I want to leave this world. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And the only reason I stay is because of you. And if that's not museful inspiration, I don't know what is. But the reason I want people to go find it, Erminia, and to read it and to see the side-by-sides is because you point out what I think is so true, and that is you can't just be influenced by the work of another artist. And that's not what we're seeing in the Shakespeare canon. So many of the Orthodox scholars will say, whoa, he obviously got a hands on this novella by Bandello, and that was what influenced him. It's not influence, it's inspiration, and the true meaning of that word, to breathe it in. Right. And in order to truly be inspired, to breathe that in, you have to have a deep understanding and appreciation for the work that you're using as your source. You can't just have casually read it and go, oh, well, that's interesting. Maybe I'll steal that story and write my own. It doesn't work that way.
No, indeed. It's not. It enters your body, enters your veins, enters your mind, enters your explosion. Everybody, my mother used to say a beautiful thing. My mother was a teacher, and my father too. My mother used to say, everybody needs to express something. It was a simple linear thing, but that is the reason why if you assign a task, and assign a task to a child, I've done it. I've composed a book with my high school students when I was a professor at high school, liceo, no? And of course, at liceo, you don't choose your students. Everybody comes in, it's just a legal schooling. And so you have different kind of attitudes and exposure and psychologies, but I've made a book with them. Tell a story invented in your bathroom, when you're alone in your bathroom. And I had like 180 stories from year 1 to year 5. So from the age of 14 to the age of 19. Sometimes those who were in year 1 wrote better stories than the one in year 5. Yes, so, and the story was whatever you want to say. So it may be a romantic story, a story of science fiction, any genre. Write whatever you want. And the acceptance was that you say, it must be set in the bathroom, you have to be on your own, and there has to be something that comes from your brain. And you don't know how many beautiful things came out, because everybody needs, as my mother said, to express something. So creativity is a potential in every brain. Sometimes situations, life situations foster, facilitate that to come out. If you especially have good parenting, good parents that help you.
It's otherwise, the spark of creation inside each of us. That's what I believe.
Yes, there is this germ. There is a germ of creativity in everybody. Everybody needs to express creativity. Some are helped by the parents. Some others are less helped. Some are helped by the schools. Like, for instance, Shamsini got a Nobel Prize for poetry in Ireland, in Dublin, because he received a scholarship. He was just the son of a farmer, but had the poetic esprit, the finesse. He was a farmer's son, but got a scholarship because he was good at high school, and then went to university, and then became a scholar, and then became a poet, and then got the Nobel Prize. So it's the opportunities, the inspiration, and the thing, the environment. He spoke a lot about the troubles. Of course, Shamsini won the Nobel Prize for his collections north, door into the darkness, and these kind of elements that refer back to the Civil War in Northern Ireland. So especially generally you win the Nobel Prize when you speak poetry that speaks for the collectivities, not only individual, for your individual life, but when you are able to speak for the other people. That's one of the reasons why Nobel Prize is attributed to poetry, when you speak for a we society.
Right.
But he was given an opportunity because, in a poem he describes the fact that his father had as a weapon to express himself like a spade, but and others had a gun, but he himself had a pen, and that was a rewriting of the ancient symbol of the pen, like another means to obtain freedom, another means to tell.
And I think that sums up ideally what we're looking at with the writer of Shakespeare. He is obtaining freedom through the characters that are layers of himself, freeing himself from the conflict, freeing himself from the authoritarianism and don't get me wrong, because he's definitely in many ways very pro-feudal. Right. I think.
Yes, sure.
And so in a way, he himself is just as bad as some of his characters, because he wants the laws to apply when he wants them to apply and doesn't want them to apply when they need to apply to him in a negative way. And I think we see that. We see his own hypocrisy through the plays, I think, quite often. And the reason why I point to your exercise where you rewrite the sonnet in basically your own words is, you take it, first of all, you feminize it because you're a woman and not a man. And then you put you put your personal layer on it, but the meaning, the context, the inspiration stays the same. And as you point out, you sort of look at it through the lens that Professor Moraru has established with his theory, and you use it in a brilliant way to basically prove your views on the Shakespeare canon by saying, okay, what comes out is not this singular genius. It's this, it's a very complex and, as you put it, self-effacing layered enterprise that involves reading, literary knowledge, travel, exposure to culture, borrowing and rewriting from other writers. And what we see then through the Shakespeare canon, if we look at that now from an Oxfordian lens, is we're seeing the author writing himself into invisibility, not erasing himself, but sort of, as you put it, refracting.
You just erase the name.
Yes.
It's only the name that is erased, but the personality, the life, the genius, the everything is there. He didn't erase anything. It's just, it is erased from the perspective that you need to attribute a particular name to a particular work. That is erased. And he probably... like there is the red pimpernel disappears, the red pimpernel.
Yes, the scarlet pimpernel.
Yes, the scarlet.
Yes.
Sorry,
it's okay.
La primula rossa, we call it in Italian. Sure. The scarlet pimpernel. But the work remains, the story remains, the adventure remains. It's that the effacement is done only for the name. But I wanted to say something, if you allow me, Stephen, to say that in rewriting the sonnet. I've tried in my life to write sonnets. It's the most difficult thing ever. It's the most difficult thing ever because it's a cage. I mean, I don't have another name but cage. It's a trap. It's entrapping. Mm-hmm. So this is it. The sonnet.
The very structure. You mean the structure of the three stanzas and then the couplet at the end. That structure is very confining, isn't it?
Is an entrapment. Yeah. The trap tells you if you manage to put content, bravo. but this is it. You're not going to change me. But apart from the fact that Shakespeare did change the structure and did very well with the heroic couplet, I like it a lot. But I wanted to say that in my rewriting of that sonnet, there was a motivation, which is the human motivation. And I was in the same despair.
Yes. So thus your statement about the deep understanding and appreciation for the work.
Yes.
It
was a great despair.
In its own way, in your own moment, through your own process, autobiographical then.
Yes, there is always a reason why you rewrite a tradition, you rewrite, you try to transform, to inhabit that form, to put something of yourself inside of it. In that, when I read that sonnet, I found a reason for writing again that despair.
Well, that sonnet is, many people would say that sonnet is the to be or not to be of the sonnets, right? Mm-hmm. It is very similar to Hamlet's expression in that very famous speech. And we have to ask, why is that the most famous soliloquy in the history of literature? And yes. I think it's because of the fact that we can all relate to having at some point or many points in our lives been faced with such adversity that we felt it would be better to just disappear than to have to go on, than to have to face this grief, this pain, this challenge, whatever it is. I mean, we've all have, there are those weaknesses that we all have, those moments of despair, those moments of great fear, or those moments of great grief, where we just think, if I could just figure out a way to make this pain go away. Exactly. So I think that that's so human, and that's why it resonates with us all so much. And I think when you look at the life of Edward de Vere and you understand the amount of suffering that he had to experience in his life, you understand the canon. When you look at the life of the Stratford man, he lost a son. That's suffering. A parent losing a child. I can't imagine the grief. I don't want to try to imagine the grief. But that's it. That's the only suffering that we know he ever went through.
And it's not our fault if the people still believe in the Stratford guy. It's not my fault if they still believe in it.
No, it's not. You're doing all you can to try to convince them that they need to look at it a different way.
No, but I'm not even trying to convince them. I'm going my way. And I'm following all the people that are going that way. Now the people who believe in the painted statuette in Stratford upon Avon, where there is the beautiful shop of the glove makers, where Anne Hathaway, that beautiful woman with 3 children, lived their life probably of a villager. It's okay, but I don't want to even mention that because there is the work that's been done is not there, it's not in that man. Let's forget it. It's not my fault or your fault, or if they do not want to accept that, what can we do? A time will come when they will have to reconcile with the fact that you have to face this work from an epistemological point of view. How the knowledge not the sentiments, not the life stories, because you can invent them, but the knowledge. Okay, so you say, I am a science fiction person, can invent whatever I want with the means of my creativity. No, epistemologically, we have their knowledge that had to be acquired through certain means of acquisitions, which is education, which is exposure to traveling, which is learning of foreign languages, which is, getting hold in the proper places of books that were untranslated. This is epistemological method. When you say not only who speaks in the text, but what, where the topics that are spoken about in such depth by such a knowledgeable person, taken from where? You have to follow the route. All the stories written in Italy. How did the Stratford men get hold of all the authors that wrote novellas that remained untranslated until the 18th century, 19th century? If we could not even speak...
If we look at the entire Shakespeare canon as you describe it, as a dispersed autobiography, then we have to ask, whose autobiography is it? It's certainly not the autobiography of the man from Stratford.
I don't want to even to speak about the man. Let him sleep in peace in his grave. He has done what he could for his family. He secured his family lands, some houses to his sister, brother, I don't know, sister, daughters. He made what he could to nobilitate their existence as any father and loving husband. First of all, this guy had a wife. He liked her. We are attributing to him terrible betrayals with a young man, with the dark lady. This guy had a wife, which was called Anne Hathaway. He procreated. He was not homosexual. Even he procreated 3 children. Probably went regularly back home and retired to be in the same house as Anne Hathaway. This was his simple life emotionally. Let's not forget that De Vere, in fact, was forced to marry Anne Cecil. He did not love her. He was forced by the situation to marry her. He did not accept the child of his own, which was Elizabeth, the first daughter, and did not want to see, not even see Anne Cecil for 5 years, to the point of drawing to madness this poor woman. He was a evil husband. Let's be unfaithful. He in Italy probably had lovers. He went back and had a lover he had what was a Vavasseur was the name of the
I can't imagine. I'm certain there have to be, Shakespeare or not Shakespeare, plays and poems aside, based on what we know about the life of Edward de Vere, and then looking at 16 months of travel, mostly in Italy, and especially what we know about Italy and the places in Italy that he visited, if he didn't father 1 or 2 children and he doesn't know it, I'd be shocked. Because you can't tell me that a man who was as promiscuous as he was spent that entire time in Italy and didn't find a lover or 2 or 5 or 10 or a dozen. And let's face it, they didn't have birth control like we have today. There could be some De Vere bastards running around with Italian blood to this day that we don't even know about, right? Like, I mean, there could be generations who owe their parentage to him, and we just don't know it.
No, this is very possible, very possible. Also because of in Italy, sexuality was very open at the time. So I imagine that he had a lot. I mean, let's talk about Edward de Vere. We know that he went there. We know how long he stayed in Italy, in which towns and cities he was present. He was acknowledged like the great Earl of Oxford, present in our cities. They wrote about reports back to William Cecil. This is what he's doing. He's considered eccentric. He's considered flamboyant. He's considered very handsome. So we know they wrote back his behavior was not certainly of somebody believing, oh my God, in the Christian punishment for his sin.
Well, he probably had women throwing themselves at him left and right. I mean, because we do know he was good looking, he was well fit, he was an excellent dancer, he was a great musician and loved music, he was obviously super learned, he spoke multiple languages, he was brilliant in every way. Like, every woman would have wanted him.
Absolutely.
For that matter, if he appeared before me right now, I would want him.
You would want to,
Yes,
me
I
too.
would.
No, I want to say that especially in Italy, I mean, we have defined the Italian society, and I have to say that Italian society is esterophilic. Esterophilic. It means, especially towards the regions, the nations from Northern Europe, we have an esterophilia. When somebody from a foreign country, especially if they come from Northern Europe, tells I am a foreigner, we like it.
Mhm.
We tend to be. I imagine you have experienced this. Every person who comes here experience this availability of people
Yes.
to make friends, to be
Yes.
helpful. This is
And they
our.
always
we
ask,
call,
they always ask, where are you from?
Yes.
What part of the United States are you from? Oftentimes I
Yeah.
have to explain to them where Oregon is
America.
located. And
Oh, yes,
one of the easiest
America.
ways to explain to Italians where Oregon is located is to
Yeah.
say Oregon is to California like Switzerland is to Italy.
Okay. So
and they immediately go, "Oh, I get it. It's right above."
Yes, I get
right
it.
above.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yes, I get it too. Right above.
Yeah.
But also, I wanted to say that the Italians. That's why it's so nice to come on holiday in Italy. Is that the Italians are curious of the foreigners. You know, they have an interest.
The
So
French
imagine
don't
when-
want anything to do with you. The French are so
Oh,
anti-visitor. I mean, that's been my
yes.
not all of them, but a lot of the times we were met with very curt responses, rude responses. A lot of the like servers at restaurants were very aloof and not friendly and very matter of fact. The French were very, very. It was the first time I'd been to France and spent time in several cities while we were there, and they all were very similar in that they were not as welcoming or friendly whatsoever.
No, this is sad. It is sad because, I mean, it's such a cultural place. It is sad because it makes the traveling in France a bit difficult for this reason. But anyhow, the traveling in Italy, and therefore also the traveling when the beer came. I mean, the Queen wrote a lot of letters of presentation because he had already planned all the visits that were, you know, apparently were diplomatic visits, but he had to visit all the city-states, you know, to interact with nobility there. So Elizabeth wrote a lot of letters of presentation. And the letters were written back to tell what he was doing.
And I think he picked up an endorsement from France too on his way through, right? As he came through France,
yes,
he was like, you know what will also help is having something from a Catholic country, because these letters of presentation from my heretic queen might only get me so far in Italy. But the King of France also was like, okay, here, yeah, you can. I'll put my stamp of approval on it too. And I think that was probably very helpful.
This is, I mean, I watched the film Anonymous. I watched it. And the first time I watched it, not understanding what was going on. But gradually I watched it again and again and again. And I really think that the filmmakers did a very good, and the script writers did a very good job. For the choice of scenes. And I liked it particularly when Ben Jonson arrives at the palace where De Vere was living. There are some historical incongruences, but it's okay because
that's historical fiction. Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah, it's a fiction, historical fiction. But anyhow, I really like when he is looking at this bush of roses, and Ben Jonson arrives with an Italian there called Francesco, but he could be John Florio. He could well be John Florio. I guess John Florio was around at his house as a tutor of Italian, because of course he wanted to go to Italy that he could already speak Italian, and he had at his house somebody speaking Italian with him all the time in order to interact with. And they have found recently, they have found copies of I don't remember now exactly what, but they found a copy of a play with annotation by John Florio. I can't remember exactly. It was on The Guardian, this news. So probably John Florio acted, and it is beautifully chosen when Ben Jonson, that is from working class kind of strata, arrives, and he takes Ben Jonson into his study and says, "I'll give you the money if you publish my work. I give you the money." And he starts taking down the shelves full of dust, a lot of manuscripts, and tells him, you have to publish them. And he says, "How do you want me to publish all this stuff?" And he says, "Under your name." And Ben Jonson says, "No, because I am already a published author, I can't do that." So they find somebody else, they find this actor, this Shakespeare, that has much to do with actually what De Vere was doing in his tournament. He was holding a spear and was shaking it in order to hit the target. No, it was exactly what he would do in these tournaments for the Queen, that he would always win. De Vere would always win the tournament, and I have researched into this. No, so he was not only a writer, he was also a sportsman, because in order to keep a lance or a spear, Shakespeare, to hold such a heavy spear and ride horses at high speed to compete with others and to hit this metal target, you needed to have very strong arms, legs, able to ride a horse at high speed while wearing, a costume,
Heavy metal. Very, very heavy
metal.
Yeah.
Armatura, we call it in Italian, armatura. So the scene was beautifully presented. So this Earl was an intellectual, and he was a poet, and could not possibly publish anything under this name, because he would put shame on his family's name, his earldom, everything. You're writing for the folk people, you're writing for the theater where prostitutes go. So, there was a lot of prejudice against the theater, but people would go to have fun, like going to the brothels, like in Pompeii, they would go to the brothels. Also, the aristocrats would go to brothels to have fun. So he could never publish under his name. He was an Earl. It was the great Lord Chamberlain. And he had to find somebody. Look, this is what I've written. Okay, this is the money. Go to the printer and make it published and take it to the stage. But of course, Ben Jonson was a great author himself, said, "I cannot do it. We have to find a name. We have to find an alter ego."
And we're finding more and more, and there are plenty of researchers out there who are doing the work, and it's great work that they're doing. We're finding more and more reason to believe that Ben Jonson definitely was the guy who made it all happen. And whether he pinned it on the man from Stratford on purpose, whether that became an accident later developed by David Garrick and others, that's part of it still a big mystery. But certainly Jonson was definitely, it's undoubted that he was involved in making sure that the first folio got published. And, obviously that very famous piece in the beginning, not, I guess it wouldn't call it the title page, but the dedication page, I suppose. But, it's opposite that famous picture where he says, "Don't look at this picture." It's pretty obvious. Don't look at this picture. This picture is a cartoon. Don't look at that. That's not real. Look at these works, and what you'll find is the identity of the author is in the words, not in the picture. It's pretty clear. So.
If I may draw the listeners' attention to another essay that I have written, always on academia, is who speaks in the text. It's exactly this. Is what Ben Jonson recommended the future readers. Don't look at the name on it. Look at what is written inside and who is the author from what he says. The name is a name, like Umberto Eco says in The Name of the Rose, no? The author has delivered what he has written and then has disappeared, effaced himself. The Name of the Rose, have you read the novel?
I have not, but I've seen the English version of the film, obviously, with
Sean
Connery.
Sean Connery. I've read the novel only 10 years ago, even if at home I had the 2 copies belonging to my husband. I had a difficulty because it is such a thick book, and this whole theory is a theoretical novel. Because I analyze more poetry than novels. I had to analyze novels when I was at university. I had to do it, all the novels possible. So I kept on looking at The Name of the Rose, the Pendolo di Foucault. And then I found this stratagem to listen to it. And it took me of never ending listening, like 4 days. 7 days probably, read through Audible.
Yeah.
So I used Audible because it's such an incredibly long novel, and it's so theoretical. It's full of theories, and it's written with the pretense that it's a historical novel, but in fact it's semiotics alive. How do we discover who is the author of a given text, and so to trace back all the ships that this text has with other authors, So and also the history of the heresies, that were as a pretext to speak about, that you can never know who is the author unless the author declares who is himself, who is he. Unless you do like Petrarca did. Petrarca was a self-biographist, was obsessed that his name and the work had to be absolutely related. So he wrote a lot about himself and made sure that whatever he had written was under his name, with manuscripts, with recorded, registered samples, that this is written by me, this is my signature, this is my handwriting, this, and never-ending bibliography, So, but others don't do that. So, and this is The Name of the Rose. So you only know the real author when you conduct like a police investigation,
Right. Well, and that's what I always say, that the people who listen to this program, all of us who are members of the Quiller Nation, we are all super sleuths trying to solve this great literary mystery. And thanks to the work of people like yourself, we get closer and closer, and we have a better understanding with every analysis and every new Oxfordian, as you yourself have now become.
I have to tell you that I am in love with Shakespeare. I just am in love with him. That's why it's a bit of a political thing, a police investigation, as well as a work of love.
Well, I think that probably speaks for just about everybody who listens to this program. We are definitely in love with the work, and we want to make sure that the right person gets credit for creating this beautiful work. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Erminia Passannanti. You can find her work at Academia website, which is where I found her piece, which I encourage you to find and read first, which is Rewriting Concealment in the Italian Matrix, Edward de Vere and the Shakespearean Canon. There are several other works that she has published there, and as she just mentioned, you can find them there. And and she encourages you that you do. You can also reach out to her through that platform as well. If you find something intriguing or you'd like to ask a question directly of Erminia, she is very accessible, as you can tell, and very friendly and charismatic. And what a fun and wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise.
Thank you very much to you. Thank you very much for the honor that you have given me to speak about this subject that for me is a new passion. So forgive me if I may appear, not well informed.
I think you appear very well informed. There's no doubt about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your night.
And you. Bye-bye.
What a fascinating two-part conversation. I want to once again thank my guest, Dr. Erminia Passannanti, for calling in all the way from Salerno, Italy. It's no wonder the Italians have often tried to claim Shakespeare as one of their own, and I believe he was at heart. An extra shout out to our October Quiller of the Month, Edward Henke. Remember, you too can be selected as Quiller of the Month by joining our Patreon page at the serial Quiller level or above. And know that your contributions there go completely toward keeping this series going. Now in the final months of our 7th season and already lining up guests for season number 8. Be sure to join our email list to stay informed about coming guests, cool finds, and future Quiller events. Just visit don'tquillthepodcast.com and click on the big black box, add your email, and we will send you the not so regular email news updates about the show. We don't send a lot. We don't even send them every month, and we definitely don't sell our list or share our list with anyone ever. Thank you again for being here, Quiller Nation, and keep asking questions.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a rating and review in your podcast player. For even more, visit our website, don'tquillthepodcast.com. There you can find official merchandise in our shop, as well as a link to our Patreon. This show is made possible by people like you. We hope you'll consider showing your support by becoming a monthly patron, where you'll receive bonus material and tons of exclusive perks. You can also join in the conversation on our Discord and by following us at Don't Quill the Pod on all social media. All of this can be found at don'tquillthepodcast.com, don'tquillthepodcast.com.
It's Dragon Wagon.